Notre Dame fans, welcome to a special edition of the Irish Breakdown podcast. My name is Brian Driscoll. I'm the publisher at irishbreakdown.com, and tonight we're going to talk about the commitment of Devin Moore to Notre Dame. This is a big one for Notre Dame. This is essentially, it's going to complete the cornerback class essentially for Notre Dame right now. There's another cornerback they would take, but they're right now that's not going to get him. So Notre Dame has met their cornerback needs, and we're going to dive into that. We're going to dive into the film of Devin Moore. We're going to dive into what's next at cornerback. We're going to talk a little bit about Marcus Freeman, a little bit about Mike Mickens. So got a lot in store for you tonight. So, but the topic of the show, obviously, is Notre Dame has picked up a commitment from Devin Moore, a 6'2". I've seen him listed from 6'2 to 6'3". First of all, I'm sorry. I got a little ahead of myself. Happy Independence Day to everybody. I hope all of you are having a great, great day. I appreciate all you here that are it's July 4th. There's fireworks, there's cookouts, and you guys and gals are all here to talk Notre Dame football, and I absolutely love it. So we're going to dive right into the commitment of Devin Moore. So Devin Moore is a 6'2", 6'3"-ish. I've seen him listed at both. He's a very long cornerback from Naples, Florida, in Naples High School in Naples, Florida. Very underrated cornerback. Was a consensus three-star for a while. Rivals has now bumped him up to a 4-star. I anticipate him getting a bump at 247 as well. I graded him out as a top 150 caliber player that just missed out on being a top 100 player. I just want to see a little bit more out of him and from some technique areas as he goes into his senior year. But this is a big time pickup, a great fit for the Notre Dame defense. So let's talk a little bit about how this recruitment really went down. And I think getting Devin Moore is just an example of why I am so high on the Notre Dame defensive coaching staff right now, and why I think that side of the ball is really just cruising the way that it is. And what I mean by that is part of recruiting success is not just, getting certain players and getting top players, but it's also about you've got to have a good strategy going into it. And this is an example of that where obviously early on there were some players that Notre Dame identified as top prospects, and some of them were highly ranked guys, some of them weren't. But Notre Dame was patient at cornerback. And perfect example is early on it looked like Notre Dame was going to get Jaden Gould, who is a 4-star cornerback from New Jersey, player that Notre Dame coaching staff liked, but they didn't rush it. There were some concerns about Jaden that they had as a player, injury type of things where they said, we could get this highly ranked kid and he's long and he's tall and he fits our system, but let's continue to play this thing out. Let's not force the issue. Devin Moore is a player they started getting on about that time. Notre Dame got on him pretty early and really beat a lot of programs to the punch when it came to really making a push for him. So when we got to the summer or we started getting closer to the summer and his recruitment started to really take off, and programs like Alabama got into the mix, programs like Florida really started pushing more, Notre Dame was already in really a great position with Devin. And that was a really big part of how this whole thing went down. So I think that was something that you look at and say, this was a big part of the success for Notre Dame, was being ahead of the game, getting on him early, but also it's interesting how this cornerback class has really come together because the staff has really not forced the issue. There's been a level of patience here. There has been, you just look at the kid, you say, or look at the class, and you say that what I thought it was going to look like 3-4 months ago is not what it looks like. But this version of it is better because the coaching staff had patience. They didn't force the issue just to get good players. They wanted to get the best players they could. And they shot for it. And obviously Devin Moore was part of that. And this is a player there's really been two corners that have been near the top of the board or at the top of the board for months. Devin Moore is one of those players. And they have really been all over him. Obviously they got Jaden Mickey very early in the class. And Devin Moore has been that guy that this staff really, really wanted because as we've seen from Mike Mickens and Marcus Freeman at Cincinnati with Ahmad Gardner, very tall corner, we saw this with Mike Mickens at Bowling Green, too, with Nick Johnson. He had a 6'3" freshman cornerback at Bowling Green, true freshman, that he helped turn into an all-MAC player as a true freshman. We saw it this past year with Nick McLeod, who actually is one of the smaller corners that that Mike Mickens has coached during his tenure. But this is that type of really long, rangy, athletic cornerback that Notre Dame really, really covets. And some reasons why are it gives you length, it gives you coverability, it takes away a lot of the quick game. It gives quarterbacks a much wider target to have to throw around. It's sort of the same reason you like tall and bigger, longer receivers on offense, is it gives you a bigger catch radius. Well, these cornerbacks are kind of meant to counter that. And I think as we'll dive into the film, you'll see one of the areas where I think Devin Moore strives, because it's hard to find 6'3" corners because of the certain athletic traits required to play corner in Marcus Freeman's defense, which a lot of 6'3" guys can play cover 2 and can play cover 4, but this is a different deal. This is the ability. You got to have the ability to play bump and run. You got to have the ability to play press. This is a reason that Notre Dame went after Caleb Evans. They like those long cornerbacks, and Devin Moore certainly fits that bill. So the Notre Dame staff did a great job of showing patience early on, letting the board work itself out, and not rushing to get commitments that they weren't 100% sold on. Notre Dame became 100% sold on Devin Moore very early in the process and went hard after him. This was another one of those group effort things, and obviously Marcus Freeman's going to get all the attention, and rightfully so, because he's done a great job. But this continues a trend we've seen at cornerback under Notre Dame that started before Marcus Freeman got here, and we saw this last year with Mike Mickens and how he put together the 2021 class. Getting on Ryan Barnes early, getting on Philip Riley early, players that were very talented, fit the board, ended up having very impressive offer lists, but guys that, because Mike Mickens got on them early, that relationship allowed him to thrive. And Devin Moore and Ryan Barnes are very similar players, and so you can understand why he went after him. But this is one of those deals where you're now seeing 2 years in a row. Mike Mickens has been a coach at Notre Dame for about 18 months. And in those 18 months, Notre Dame has now gotten commitments or signed 7 cornerbacks in 18 months. So very, very impressive job. And this is the second cornerback that they've landed from the state of Florida, which is something that to me is worth noting, and something that I find to be very interesting. So this is a really, really big pickup for Notre Dame. And obviously this is a guy that was a must get. And this is one of those ones where you say, okay, what are we to believe, right? When we look at recruiting, it's okay, what's the rankings? Well, his rankings aren't all that impressive. If you look at Devin Moore's Rivals has him ranked as a 4-star player, but the number 29 corner in the country. 247 Sports has him ranked as a 3-star. ESPN has him ranked as a 3-star. They both rank him as a safety. And on the composite list, he's a 3-star player, the number 364 player in the country. Then you look at his offer list. His offer list looks a whole lot different than his rankings. Notre Dame, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Florida State, Miami, Auburn, Penn State, Michigan, Tennessee, Stanford, Wisconsin, Nebraska, and a lot of other schools. And then you look at the fact that Alabama was working hard and Florida was working hard to try to not get Devin Moore to commit. And that was the really interesting thing. So I say probably within the last month and a half, those two schools really started pushing hard for Devin Moore. And both got him on campus for unofficial visits before he went to Notre Dame the weekend of June 11th. And their goal was to try to get him not to commit this summer. They knew what we knew at Irish Breakdown, which is if he commits this summer, it's probably going to be to Notre Dame. Devin is a very high academic kid. If you look at his offer list, he had an offer from Duke, and he had an offer from Stanford. Took a visit to Stanford after his visit to Notre Dame. So this is a kid that fits the profile, very talented player, also a high academic kid. And so another reason why he fit. But Notre Dame was able to kind of fight off Bama and fight off Florida and get Devin Moore to commit. And this is a huge, huge pickup for Notre Dame. Now, look, those schools are not going to stop recruiting him, just like schools did not stop recruiting Philip Riley and Ryan Barnes last year. But I like where this relationship was at. I like the bond that they've been able to build, and I like the fact that this is a young man that understands the need to have a very, very high desire to have a very, very high academic profile. Scott Fessler, my man, thank you so much for that huge Independence Day super chat. I appreciate that very much, and that's big time, man. I can't thank you enough for that. And then Brandon, thanks for sharing your 4th of July with us. Absolutely. I mean, you guys are part of my family. We call it the Irish Breakdown family. And, I'm going to make time for y'all today. And my wife is currently working on something right now that I'm excited to tell you all about, hopefully very, very soon. So we got a lot going on, but very excited to spend my time with my Irish Breakdown family. So that's Devin Moore. That's a big pickup for Notre Dame. We're going to kind of talk about his fit and some other things, what's next in the secondary, those kind of things. But I do want to dive into some film. So let's dive into some film of Devin Moore. We're going to watch him play, and I think you guys are going to get a good sense of why I am so high on Devin Moore as we go through this. So let's pop up his huddle film and get into this now. And as I have said, the first thing you're going to notice about Devin Moore is his size. Very, very long cornerback. Let's see here. It's jumping a little bit. You see that length? You definitely see that length. Very, very long athlete. All right. All right, can you all do me a favor? Is this skipping a little bit for you as you're watching this? When you're watching this, is the film fluid, or is it kind of stopping a little bit? Let me know, because it's stopping a little bit on my end. Starting to get a little bit better. You see the length. And here's another thing that you're going to notice about Devin Moore. He is very, very long. Very long. And part of that helps him, as I said, part of that is going to help him. He gets his hands on a lot of footballs. He's a very instinctive player, very smart player. Yeah, it's getting better for me too. So, but that's the thing right there. You see that this is one of the clips that to me really stood out. So when you watch him, he's playing press. So you see a couple things here. Number one, you see the length, right? That helps him. He really gets that guy off balance. You see patience. Okay, he understands. He trusts his athleticism, trusts his instincts. When that receiver makes that first inside move, you see a guy that doesn't bite on it. And then that guy makes a nice outcut. Devin actually takes a quick step inside, but you look at how that length and his instincts to find it gets around. So as soon as that corner or that receiver breaks with the ball, Devin knows he's got the angle. So what does he do? He gets his eyes back to the football, finds the football, uses his length to get his hands on the football. You're going to see a lot of that from Devin Moore on film. And as he goes into his senior year, you're going to see him do that even more. See patience, again, using his length to get around. And that's another thing where length can be really important in coverages, because if you're a little bit of a shorter armed corner and you're trying to play through the back of a guy, I want to get back to that route. You're trying to play back through, so through the back of a receiver, meaning you're coming from behind. If you're a little bit of a shorter guy, then you're going to have a little bit of a harder time kind of getting through that without making body contact. And with Devin Moore, because he's so long, he doesn't really have that issue right now. Vince has joined us here.
Hey.
He just had to get himself seen.
Yeah, that was an accident, but definitely excited to be here because this is huge. And I see you've got your gap closer shirt on, Brian.
Yep.
For good reason, because this kid is a gap closer. There's no question about it.
This is something I want you to see too right here. He's playing a little off coverage here. Look how smooth he is athletically. You don't see the tightness, really nimble feet, and he doesn't look as fast as I think that he is because of that length. Patrick, I see your super chat, man. I appreciate you so much, all of you all so much for your time and obviously for your financial support of our channel. But this is something you're going to see. I really like this kid's athleticism. And there's length. He's just kind of mauling with a guy. You really see that length, but he's a really smooth athlete. You look at the patience here, right? Okay, guy comes off the ball, stays outside. That's discipline, right? He's a support guy. Soon as he sees a run, he makes sure he gets outside, finds the ball, gets his inside hand on this guy, uses his length to keep. That's a pretty big receiver. If you look, Devin Moore's like 6'2", 6'3".
That kid's bigger.
And this kid's D'ing him up, but he keeps him outside, comes off, and delivers a nice tackle.
And what's key about that is he is the outside support. So the way he was positioning that wide receiver is he was pushing him to the inside so that he funnels back inside toward his help, right?
Yep.
And even though the running back tried to pop it out, he was there to make the play. And he's obviously not afraid to be physical either.
No, which is one of the many things I like about him that makes me think he could project a safety if the need was there. Here he is playing press. And this is the kind of press I like to play with long guys, is mix it up. Sometimes you jam, sometimes you mirror. Look how he's in phase with this guy the entire time. When that guy starts to break, he breaks.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost as if like the guy told him, hey, man, I'm going to inside release right here and run a little 5-yard hitch. It's like the guy told him that, and he's all over him. And this is the thing. You watch this receiver. He's trying to get Devin outside. He wants him to bite outside. Devin doesn't go for it. He's patient, stays on it, and then reads the route. Just gets on him. Just takes the throw away. Takes the throwing lane completely away. Now, this is something this will be a thing that when I talked earlier in the show about some things I need to see him improve upon, this is one of those examples. He crosses his feet here, and he gets a little narrow with his base at times. You can see it here, and that causes him to be this is not a clean transition. Yeah, this is not a clean transition for him. But when you watch it, you say, okay, why is this not a clean transition? Does he have tight hips, or is this a technical thing? This is 100% a technical thing, because you don't see it. And these are one of the things I want to see him improve upon. Now, he's able to get away with it in high school, but in college, there's some receivers that you're going to be able to get away with that on. So, keep your base, don't narrow your base, and then open up and run. Don't cross your feet until you've opened up. He crosses his feet before he's opened up.
And it causes him to jump that little hop right there. Right. That's what causes that. And that would make you lose that half a step.
Right. So those are some of those technical things I want to see from him. Now, here's an intriguing aspect of it. This is a position I could absolutely see him being great at, even if he's not one of the top 2 corners. So if he's not a starter at corner, look at that length in the slot. This is a kid that can match up with tight ends. This is a kid that can match up with backs. You see him more physical here, but look how long that length is big time. But I think he could. This is one of the reasons I love about him. Right. So this is a kid that to me could play 5 positions in the secondary at a high level. Mm-hmm. And the number of kids that can do that is incredibly rare. Incredibly rare. Nice recovery. I thought that guy was going to get him to the outside.
And now, so I feel like that last play was indicative of your comment about how he can play 5 different spots because he was good in space, right? And that's what you look for from a safety position because the way he was following that play, it put him in the safety position, and then he made the play. Here's
another example I'm talking about. Stays patient, doesn't bite on that guy. He understands what he's trying to do. He's trying to prevent an inside route. That receiver knows he's trying to prevent his outside route. Because here's the reason the receiver knows this, okay? Little mini football 101 here. Mm-hmm. Okay, see the receiver's inside foot is up, okay? So his inside foot is on the line. Devin Moore's outside foot is slightly inside of that player's inside foot. So that means by his alignment, his leverage is saying, you're not going to beat me inside. Mm-hmm. And what tends to happen is an outside release can get a corner to bite. Devin Moore knows he's protected inside, so a smart corner is not going to fall for that fake. Devin does a good job of not falling for that fake and not jumping that outside. So when the guy tries to beat him inside, and that's a big receiver, he's right there on him, and he squared him up, doesn't have to flip his hips. Just a really sound. It may not seem like a big deal, but that's a really sound football play. Really sound football play. Now, see here, his transition's a little bit cleaner because he's got a better base. He doesn't hop, and he opens up and runs. Much, much better play there. And you see that more often than not. And that can happen with 6'3" corners, is their footwork can get a little bit sketchy early on because they're so long. It's a little harder for a longer guy to control his feet when he's 6'2", 6'3" at that age. Good patience. It's a little bit of a tight transition. He bites on that a little bit. Gets a little tall, leans back a little bit too much. He's kind of on his butt instead of staying kind of forward on him. It's a little bit tight with this transition. But he can recover because he's so long. Watch these last couple plays here. Now, see, this is a really, really, this is not a smooth transition because you can watch him here. He's flat-footed. And so he doesn't actually open and run. He just kind of turns his body and his feet come next, right? Those are some of those technical things I talk about. See, watch that. He kind of turns his hips before he really does anything with his feet.
When I feel like a good receiver at the next level will just swim him back to the outside and cut right underneath that. Don't you think, Brian? Because the way
possibly, but the other part of that, because see, now he to Vince's point, because his technique got him. He's now got to overreact, and that guy can beat him inside. Or the thing I'm more concerned about is a guy just runs by him.
Sure,
right. But those are technical things. Absolutely. There are plenty of clips where he shows clean transitions, and that's why I say when those things get cleaned up, his ranking for me, he will jump into that top 100 category for me. Now, see, this is one of those ones where you say a kid thinks it's a highlight, but it ain't a highlight because they turned this guy loose.
Yeah.
See that guy down there running all by himself? But I love the hustle.
Look at him fight to get to the end zone, though.
Yeah. I don't love – you know why I don't love this play, Vince? I'll tell you why I don't love this play. Because I'm getting TJ Jones versus Pitt 2013 flashbacks in my head.
Yeah, I hear
guy
you.
On a long pass play and then the ball gets stripped. But so that is Devin Moore, and as you can see, very long, very smooth athlete, very clean athlete, very instinctive football player, very smart football player. Gets his hands on a lot of footballs. His game film is even more impressive because what you see on game film is they just avoid him because he just locks guys down.
Right.
And he shuts down a half of the field at the high school level. To do that at the collegiate level, which I think he's capable of, Vince, he's going to have to clean up some of that technical stuff. Because the one thing I'll say is I think he has good speed. I think he has very good long speed. But he doesn't necessarily have the kind of elite speed that can allow you to be inconsistent with your footwork. And so as that gets cleaned up, then I can easily see him being an Ahmad Gardner type of player who Ahmad Gardner at Cincinnati is not an elite athlete, and I would say Devin Moore is a better athlete than Ahmad Gardner is, but because of that length, you can overcome some of that. But I actually think Devin is faster than sometimes even shows, and you see that at times. And once his technique gets cleaned up, you're gonna see that even more. And I believe that's why I think he fits the Notre Dame defense, because if you could have a 6'3" cornerback that's maybe not an elite athlete, that's really smart, could be a great corner in college, but he'd be a great corner in more of a Julian Love type of mold, playing off, keeping things in front of you, and then driving on the football. What I like about Devin Moore, Vince, is that not only can he do that, obviously, he can be a cover 4 corner, he can play cover 2, he can play cover 3 at a very high level. I mean, you think about him playing cover 3 and trying to squeeze in on seam routes and stuff like that, and getting over top of post routes. That's not a guy you're throwing the ball over top of in that regards. But what I also like about him is that unlike a lot of 6'2", 6'3" corners, is he can come up and he can get his hands on you. But also he can also mirror. He doesn't have to jam you. He also has the ability, even if you beat him for a step off the line, he can recover with his length and his speed. And he's a good tackler. He's not a great tackler. He's a willing tackler. And he's going to get stronger. And that'll part of his game will improve. So, I mean, this is a kid that to me, Vince, doesn't have a weakness in his game from the standpoint of, gee, that could hold him back. Mm-hmm. He doesn't have any physical weaknesses. The things that he has to clean up are technical things. Now, I don't know if he's necessarily elite in any physical categories like speed, quickness, things like that, but he's at least good to very good in all of them.
Right.
The elite aspects come from the length and the instincts. Those things are there, which then allows him to maximize that speed. So when you think about what Marcus Freeman wants to do defensively, and you think about the kind of corner that Mike Mickens has had success with his entire career, this is like that kid in a lab, made in a lab. I mean, that's what Devin Moore is, in my opinion.
Yeah, this is just an absolutely huge pickup. And like you said, he may not be elite in a lot of categories, but the package is elite because he has all of those different things checkmarked. Yeah. And you don't have to take him out when you're going to dime and you're going to nick. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to mirror or mask some of his.
Right. You don't have to protect him. That's the thing, is you don't have to protect him. You can let him go on an island. And just so people know, too, you all know I've been very high on Devin Moore for a while. Vince is actually even higher on him than I am. Vince thinks he's a top 100 player. I mean, right now, definitive top 100 player. And I think Tom Loy and I have talked about Devin Moore. And I don't know if Tom has said this publicly. So if he hasn't, I apologize to Tom for putting this out there. But, you know, Tom's in line with you and I on this, too. I mean, so there's a lot of Brian Smith, who runs the UCF site, another guy that is a big film guy. He's seen Devin in person, I believe. Right. Brian's another guy that's like so like I know a lot of people, and when I've talked to people at Notre Dame, it's like, okay, what am I missing here? Why isn't this kid ranked high? Like, we see it too. So there's a lot of people whose opinions I respect. Yours, Brian's, the coaches. You know, Tom's on that same page here. The fireworks going off outside. A lot of people I see, it's like, okay, I feel better about projecting him higher than the rankings are because there's a lot of people that actually watch film who feel the same way. People who aren't into camps and all that other kind of stuff who feel the same way. This is a big time player, Vince.
Yeah, no, I really do believe that. And I just, he makes me feel a lot better about the secondary. And I was going to add this to the last thing that I said. You and I have talked about what Marcus Freeman wants to do with the defense and how he wants to be aggressive, which means he wants to be aggressive with the front seven, which means some guys are going to be left out on an island. He likes to run man to man.
Corner. Look, let's. This is what Vince. Just say what you're going to say, Vince. To run this defense, you have to have a boundary that can lock down half the field.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a lot of pressure you're putting on a kid, but like that's what they need.
I know, but
it doesn't mean they can't be good without that. But for this defense to truly thrive the way that Marcus Freeman wants it to, you have to have boundary corners that can just go lock people down.
That's exactly my point. And that's clearly why they were going so hard after Devin Moore, because he could be that guy.
Right.
And I believe that. And that's why maybe other schools don't see him as a gap closer, but that's why we see him as a gap closer, because he has the ability to potentially take this defense to another level because of the way he can play the boundary position.
The other part of this too is if they're playing a lot of pure man, like a lot of cover one, you don't necessarily have to have him only in the boundary. And so my thought is, so now my number one cornerback in the 2022 class and my number one cornerback in the 2021 class, Ryan Barnes, are both 6'2", 6'3" guys that are number one ideally suited for the boundary. So then the question you have to ask yourself is, okay, can those guys play together? And that's the thing I like about both of them. I think they're both rangy enough and instinctive enough and good enough tacklers and have enough speed to where they can also play the field. So this isn't a situation where if, let's say, Ryan Barnes, by being ahead of Devin Moore, beats him out in the boundary corner, it's not like, well, Devin, sorry, man, you have to wait for Ryan to graduate or go to the NFL. No, they can play together, whether it be in a nickel, whether it be as an outside corner. And guys like that, to me, are great fits for that fifth DB thing, because Marcus Freeman, or not Marcus Freeman, but the sources I've talked to, it's not Marcus Freeman. It's just a slip of the tongue. I was going to say Marcus Freeman's defense. Yeah. The sources I've talked to have said in Marcus Freeman's defense, he ideally would like to have a corner be that third or that fifth DB. Not a third safety.
Interesting, because we've talked about safety potentially being that spot.
Well, because that's what they did a lot of at Cincinnati. Yeah. But that's just, again, that's good coaching. That's what he had. That was the best kind of thing of what they had. But ideally, they'd like for it to be a corner. So when you look at guys like Ryan Barnes and Devin Moore and even Jaden Bellamy, to agree, who's got some length, even though he's 5'10", you look at a guy like Jaden Mickey, who's on the shorter side, but he's very physical. The thing is they're now bringing corners. Philip Riley is another example. JoJo Johnson. I mean, literally all 7 of the corners that they've landed can play at least 2 spots in this defense.
Versatility. We talk about it all the time.
And so when you look at this now, if like I was going to say, is like, let's just say hypothetically that, that Ryan Barnes is the starting boundary corner and you've still got Clarence Lewis on the roster, because he's only a year ahead of those guys, or whether it be Phillip or Chance or JoJo or Jaden Mickey or Jaden Bellamy, somebody has kind of earned that other boundary spot or field spot. you put Devin Moore in that slot position, and I'm feeling really good about it. You know, if you have issues at safety, you now have guys like Barnes, now Devin, Philip Riley. I think Chance Tucker has this. I think Jaden Bellamy could be this. You now have 5 guys that are corners, are legit corners, but also have tools to say, not that if he can't stick at corner, that's my pet peeve, Vince, right? Well, if he can't stick at corner, he's not good enough for corner, move him to safety. No, that's not how you have elite defense.
Yeah, no.
You have really good corners who are okay, this guy, we can move this guy here because we think he can play just as good there, and we have other guys that we want, that we think we can step into that corner spot and not miss a beat. And I think that's where they're getting to. So you've now signed 7 corners in 2 years. And so when we talk about his fit into the defense, boundary is where I'm going to start him, right?
Yep.
But that's not where you have to keep him. And that's the good thing. Or if he does pass up Ryan Barnes, then you could then move Ryan Barnes somewhere else. Either way, right? And I think that kind of flexibility is so important in this defense. And that's what Ryan Barnes, or excuse me, true Ryan Barnes, but that's what Devin Moore to me brings to the table.
So, we always like to kind of finish off our analysis with what's next at the cornerback position. You can take this any direction you want, whether what's next with the defense, what's next for the cornerback position.
No, we're going to stick a corner. What's next? Go get A.J. Harris in 2023. That's
so
what's next.
So you're putting a bow on 22.
Well, I mean, if I think they're going to continue recruiting Benjamin Morrison, and I would, but just everything I've heard is he's not going to come Notre Dame. He's going to go somewhere else. Now, if that changes, great. Take Benjamin Morrison. I'm good with that. But I just don't think they're going to get him. So I'm ready to move on. And I think what this does, the 4 guys that they've signed last year, the 3 guys that they've signed this year, if you look again, look at what they do, right? And so when we look and say, man, they didn't sign any safeties in 2020. They got 2 guys last year. The 2019 safety depth chart, by the time this class is gone, Kyle Hamilton's going to be gone. All you have is Litchfield Ajavon. So 3 safeties really in 3 years, and one of them has never played maybe 1 or 2 snaps on defense in his career. And say, man, why aren't they recruiting more? Why did they drop KJ Winston? Why did they drop so-and-so? Because this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to recruit long athletic guys that can fit into multiple spots and say, why do we need to force ourselves to take a guy who's a safety when we're recruiting a bunch of big corners that we could play there? And those guys are going to bring better coverage ability, because that's the ultimate goal. Find guys can cover, right? And that's what they're looking to get. And that's why you see them maybe not taking as many safeties. Now, they'd still take 2 safeties in this class. If Jake Pope and Xavier Nwankwo want to come, don't get me wrong, they're going to take those guys. But they're not going to force the issue. And if we miss out on our second safety, we got to take so-and-so and so-and-so. It's no. That's why we're recruiting these kind of corners that we're recruiting. I mean, if we got to start 4 corners, we'll start 4 corners, which for some teams may seem like, oh, boy, that's a bad idea. But when you've recruited corners who are Devin Moore's 6'3", 185, you've got Ryan Barnes, who's 6'3", 190. You've got Philip Riley, who's 5'11", 6 foot, over 190 pounds. You've got Chance Tucker, who's 6 foot with long arms. You've got Jaden Mickey, who's a thumper. Even though he's 5'11 and a half, 5'11", 175-pound corner, is probably the best hitter of those guys not named Philip Riley in the last couple classes. I mean, Jaden will stick you. That's another guy that could play corner. I mean, and he's 2 inches taller than Sean Crawford was. So there's a lot of positional flexibility here among the corners, and that's what this Mike Mickens and Marcus Freeman are looking for. They want those type of long, athletic, rangy cover guys. And then they'll figure out who's going to start at corner, who's going to be the depth at corner, who's going to be a safety, who's going to be a nickel, all that. They'll figure all that out, and that's what they're looking for. Here's what else, speaking of the what's next, here's what else they have done by recruiting now. They have commitments from 9 DBs in 2 years, and they're going to get it. They want to get at least 1 more, hopefully 2. So it'll be 11 in 2 years. Here's what else that has done, and this is impactful. There's now about 15 guys I would just chop off my 2023 board and say, nope, not going to recruit those guys. And I'm now focused on the best.
You shoot for the moon.
I'm focused on A.J. Harris. I'm focusing on Justin Rhett. I'm focusing on Kyan Lee, the best of the best, because you only need 1 next year, really. I mean, if we're being honest, if you only sign 1 corner next year and it's a guy as good as A.J. Harris or what I think Justin Rhett can be, although I need to see more Justin Rhett. He's from Nevada. They didn't play They didn't really do spring ball. I mean, so again, we got to see him develop. But there are things that I like about him that I say I think he's going to be a top 100 guy. So I'm putting him in that category for now, with the caveat of I need to see his junior film. Okay, but that kind of caliber player, if a guy is not that, I'm not recruiting him unless I think he's a guy that I definitely feel as a staff I would move to safety. That's the only other way I'd recruit that kind of corner. That, hey, he's a good corner, but I think he could be a great safety. That's the only other kind of corner that I would recruit. But now, because you have signed 7 corners in 2 years, you do have 2 safeties signed in the last year. You do think you're going to get at least 1 more safety. Your focus at safety and corner in the 2023 class are nothing but impact talent. Now, impact talent doesn't mean top 50 recruit, as we've talked about. It means guys like Devin Moore. It means guys like Brian Barnes. It means guys, top of the line, your players. I don't care what the recruiting rankings say. It's about what the Notre Dame coaching staff thinks. And that's really where they're at now. RJG Irving, fireworks on the 4th of July. Fantastic. And that's what we got. And Vince, you can probably hear the same one since we live in the same neighborhood.
Yes, I can.
We're probably still
it'll be us here in about an hour. So
yes, no doubt about it.
Stash ready to go.
No doubt about it. So thank you for that, RJ.
Thanks, man.
So Vince, this is a big one. This is a big one for Notre Dame, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely huge. Yeah. And like you said, I've been high on him for a while, and I just love the length and the athleticism. And I know that's what Marcus Freeman's looking for at corner. I get it. But it's nice to land that.
It's what Mike Mickens is looking for too. I mean, go look at last year's corner class.
Of course.
And that's the thing I want people to understand. And somebody made this comment last week. When I say, okay, yes, we can talk about how Marcus Freeman's a monster. And we had one of those questions, right here, or one of the drunk Vigo. Freeman is a monster. Absolutely right. All I'm saying is this wasn't just Marcus Freeman.
Right.
It's Marcus Freeman and Mike Mickens.
And we've seen
it's Marcus Freeman and Mike Elston, right? But that's a good thing because you can't do it by yourself. Very few coaches and like Harry Heastand was that way. Harry kind of did it himself to a degree, but Chip Long helped a little bit and Mike Denbrock helped a little bit. But offensive line's a different animal. Most positions you can't be that way. So you need to have that team effort, and that's ultimately what's going to make Notre Dame an elite recruiting operation on defense. And I think they're there. They got a couple guys I want to see them finish with. Sure. For me to truly say it's elite, And I think one of those guys I'm very confident they're going to get. And then it comes down to between Anthony Lucas and Xavier Nwakpa, you got to get one of those guys. Ideally 2, but you got to get one of those guys, in my opinion. Because now I want to see you pull off the upset. That's the final step for the staff. I don't know if they've pulled off the upset yet. I think Tyson Ford was a guy that I felt they could have got if Clark Lee would have been a little bit more involved in that. Marcus Freeman stepped in, and Tyson Ford's such a natural Notre Dame fit. You can maybe say Aiden Gabbert was a little bit of an upset because Penn State was considered his leader for so long. I don't know if Devin Moore's not an upset, right? Jaden Bellamy wasn't an upset. Jaden Mickey wasn't an upset. None of the linebackers were upset. Maybe Josh Burnham. That might be an upset, right? But I want to see the upset of the guy that maybe you're not expecting. So Xavier Nwakpa, who a month ago we thought was going to be committed to Ohio State, or Anthony Lucas is the kind of guy that normally Notre Dame doesn't get. That's that final step that I want to see from this staff, and that's why this has been a fun 6 months when it comes to almost 7 months now when it comes to covering Notre Dame recruiting, because
no question,
these are the positions that people have said for years Notre Dame you just can't recruit players there. Really athletic cornerbacks from Florida, right? With offers from Bama and Florida and Georgia. Notre Dame can't get those. Those kids don't want to go to school. Okay, Devin Moore's a borderline 4.0 student.
I was going to say Devin Moore is a complete let me just say because I'm sure you brought this up.
Jaden Mickey's
earlier.
The same way. Jaden Mickey has very good grades.
Yeah, I'm sure you brought this up front, but Devin Moore, good gracious. The kid is a really smart kid. He's very
I think he took 2 official visits this spring, and they were to Notre Dame and Stanford.
Yeah, that's all you have to say. Clearly academics was important for him, and the only reason Stanford was in the mix was because of the academic side. Let's be honest. If you can put Stanford and Notre Dame next to each other on a football field, but it's not going to end well for Stanford.
Not recently, yes.
Just going to say it. So
these are the positions they haven't done well. Defense. You can't recruit defensive end at an elite level at Notre Dame. Those kids just don't want to go to class. Well, yes, they do. You just didn't have the right kind of coaches in place to get them. now you do
with the moxie to go in and go for it.
Right.
Absolutely.
I mean, they're recruiting at such a high level right now, and that's what's been fun to watch is they're just blowing up a lot of those old narratives, and they're doing it quickly.
Yeah.
Like in a hurry.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about this last year with Ryan Barnes too. I mean, Ryan Barnes was considered a 3-star recruit, but his offer list and the schools that wanted him were not those of a 3-star recruit. You know, and that's the thing that I like is they are going. I mean, they beat Clemson for Ryan Barnes. You know, they beat Florida and Alabama for Devin Moore. That's what's kind of made this really fun to.
I love the teams that they're beating out. I mean, again, I agree with you. There hasn't been a huge upset in the 22 class, but they're still going up against some of the big boys, right? And they're beating them for some. Well,
and part of the reason they're beating them is because they're getting them on them so early,
right?
And that's
huge.
Good recruiting strategy. And that's something we did talk about before you got on, Vince. Was you know the fact that they got on so early. By the time Bama and Florida really started to make their push, Notre Dame was like they already established themselves.
Exactly, and that was something that we knocked the staff about, you know, a few years back.
Right,
is they weren't getting on kids early enough. And they would try to swoop in late, and there was just too much ground to be made up. Well, now the tides have turned a little bit with some of these kids, which is fantastic. Which is a credit to the recruiting staff, no question. They're turning the table on that, and they're getting on kids early, which is fantastic.
Yep.
So
this was one of the big ones we talked about. This was this is one of those ones we talked about that first week of July. We said that if Devin Moore made a decision this summer, it would be good for Notre Dame. The question was, and this as of 3-4 days ago when I talked to sources, they were still in that discussion mode with Devin to say, okay, is this what you want to do? Are you going to take it in the fall? So they did have to close. Let's just say closing is the key. And this one they closed on. They absolutely closed on this one. So this is a big one for Notre Dame. I expect them to get one more commitment for sure over the next week. There's a couple more that could happen, but I expect them to get one more public commitment over the next week. We'll have to see kind of how it goes down. They got to finish up some things and close a little bit, but I don't think they're done. They're not done in July, in my opinion. So this is what commitment number 2 in the month of July, right?
Yeah,
we set the over under on 4, right?
4 days in.
Yeah, so this is a big one, and this is a result of that month of June we talked about, right?
Oh yes,
the month of June was the key. Didn't mean that all those kids had to commit in June. They've now had 2 of the kids that visited, Jaden Bellamy obviously being the first. So you're really feeling good about your cornerback class. You kind of have that position locked down. You've met your needs. The needs in this class, they want it. Well, they really only needed 2 corners in this class, just 2 pure corners. They wanted 3. That was a want, not a need. That's also something I love about this defensive staff. They don't need 4 linebackers in this class. They want 4 linebackers. They don't need 3 DNs in this class. They wanted 3 defensive ends in this class, and they're getting them. And that's another piece of this puzzle too. So they met their minimum needs, and they met it with impact players. And look, Jaden Bellamy right now is clearly my 3rd cornerback in this class. It wasn't that long ago, like maybe 2-3 years ago, where Jaden Bellamy is your number 1 corner. I mean, and it's not. I mean, not clearly your number 1 corner,
right?
And that's a great sign. That's not a knock on Jaden Bellamy. That's like you want to keep getting kids like that. But he's, I kind of call him maybe a faster version of Clarence Lewis, right? Which is a good thing. Now he's your 3rd corner instead of your number 1 corner. And you're not taking projects. That's the other thing. Is there's some guys they've taken in recent years that have some tools, but they were projects. They weren't developmental players. They were projects. Maybe they pan out, maybe they don't. Devin Moore, Jaden Mickey, Jaden Bellamy, they're not projects. They need development, but we're talking about junior film. I haven't played their senior years yet. So it's a very exciting time. So that's it for the corner recruiting, and we talked a little bit about what's kind of coming next. But Vince, before we get out of here, let's get some comments and some questions before we roll out of here.
Well, obviously a lot of positivity.
And again, I can't appreciate all of you. I mean, we're almost 200 people in the chat right now. I can't thank y'all enough for being. I mean, it's July 4th. It's Independence Day. It's 8:20. I'm sure there's fireworks going off and grill going off. So we appreciate y'all being here with us. Before you leave, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel. Hit the notification bell. Make sure you're checking out irishbreakdown.com. And if you're listening on the podcast, leave us a 5-star review. And keep your eye out for some announcements coming up this week regarding Irish Breakdown and some things we got going on. But appreciate y'all being in here with us on this. So we're going to try to wrap this up quickly and get to questions quickly, so that way you all can get back to your thing, to your whatever you're doing with your families or whatever the case may be. And I'd like to go see some fireworks. And I need to get back with my wife so we can finish up this little project that we're working on for Irish Breakdown that I'm just teaching you all with.
You're such a tease, Brian. That's really all there is to it.
Yep.
All right. Do we want to throw up like all the excitement?
No, I just kind of get this one really from Kenny, since Kenny's my guy. Really good addition. Happy 4th, IB family. And then we can dive into the comments. And I want to do this one from Coleman first, Vince, because this does kind of something that I didn't really hammer on enough during the show, but it's a really good question and point. So,
yes, he says now this means go all in on Nwankpa and Pope.
That is important because now Mike Mickens is freed up to not only focus on the 2023 kids, but now you have Marcus Freeman doesn't have to keep, he doesn't have to hammer Devin Moore the way that he has been.
Yeah.
Or Jaden Bellamy the way they had been. Now you're putting even more of your resources on those 2 safeties. And that's
huge.
A very important thing.
If they can close on both of those guys, that would be unbelievable.
Yeah, and then just to kind of follow up Garth Cassidy, if you want to read down, because that's kind of like that's why we have 190 people in the chat right now, which is
Garth.
Awesome.
Garth says, "Happy Independence Day, Irish Breakdown family. Love that there are people as crazy as me about Notre Dame football and Notre Dame football recruiting. Hey, man,
including us, because we're
here.
Vince wasn't even going to be in the chat at first. That's why he was late. Yeah. He had a little propane problem with the grill.
Not prepared
to make it, but he hustles down here because he was all bummed that he wasn't going to be in the show tonight. But
because this is huge, man. I needed to be a part of today because it's a gap closer. I wanted to be a part of it, no question about it. D-Rock says, boom, big pickup here. Fireworks over the Golden Dome on this commitment here in Southwest Florida. Naples is a football powerhouse with some quick and hard-hitting athletes. Happy Independence Day.
Mm-hmm. And Jordan, you absolutely knew I was going to be here, man. I mean, I appreciate that. He says you are dedicated, Brian. So is Vince. He left that comment before you got here, Vince.
Yeah, I love that.
But no, we're definitely. I mean, there may be times I'm not going to be able to make these kind of things, but I mean,
we're going to do them when we can.
Yeah, I mean, I do them every chance we get. So we
no
love
doubt.
it. We appreciate it. But look, we only do it because we know you all are going to show up.
Right.
And we know you all want it, and that's what we're here to provide. So I really appreciate you being part of it.
I got to put Kenny's up here. Kenny says, leaving the family barbecue to check out the show. Mother-in-law just rolled her eyes at me.
You know what? I mean, if you don't, it's like, what is Lou Holtz's old saying, right? We could say about Irish Breakdown, right? If you haven't experienced Irish Breakdown, then you won't understand.
Yeah.
If you have experienced Irish Breakdown, no words are necessary, right?
Oh,
I think it was something like that, right?
Yeah.
And Spartan B, I want to respond to this. Still need Morrison, Nwankpa, and Pope. I don't think they need Benjamin Morrison anymore. And look, I like Benjamin Morrison. So a buddy of mine asked me last night. He said, "Who would you rank higher, Benjamin Morrison or Devin Moore?" And I said, "Well, it depends. If I'm just doing a top 100 and just independent of position, I'd have Devin Moore ranked higher because he has so much positional flexibility. As a pure corner right now, Benjamin Morrison had the highest grades when it came to just the pure corner stuff by a little bit, right? Not by, and I think as Devin Moore cleans up some of his technique, I think he will pass Benjamin Morrison, but they're very close as just a pure corner. So this is not this. I love Benjamin Morrison, but they don't need him anymore. They've got 3 corners in this class. They don't need an 8th corner in 2 years. So Nwankpa and Pope. Again, I don't think they need both of them. They need one of them. They want both of them. That's the little bit there. So I get where you're coming from, but I would somewhat just a little bit disagree with you on that.
Dylan Hoffman says Bellamy has a ceiling, but Mickey and Moore are legit corners for the Irish. Big land. Pope and Nwankpa would make the secondary class a home run.
Yeah, agree. I mean, I think one of them makes it really, really good. Both of them makes it a home run. And to your point, Dylan, this is kind of what I was hinting at earlier. I like Jaden Bellamy. He's not an elite prospect, right? There are some areas where his game needs to still develop. He's not a guy that I graded out as high as others. But when he's your 3rd corner, that says a lot. And here's the other thing. Let's say that Jaden Bellamy isn't a guy that necessarily is a full-time corner. Because he's now your number 3, you can play him as a nickel guy. You can play him in some areas where maybe you can protect him a little bit more. You could play him as sort of a cover safety. There is a place for that on 3rd down or against a USC where, maybe a guy isn't a full-time safety. He's not going to be playing safety against Wisconsin and Stanford and teams like that. But maybe you can play him as a nickel safety against those teams that like to throw. That's another place where you can play Jaden Bellamy. But if you don't get those other 2 corners in Mickey and Moore, then you have to leave Jaden Bellamy there, which then takes away some of the value of what I like about Jaden Bellamy, which is his versatility and his ability to play a lot of different positions. So it's a good observation there.
Chris Fortson says, I see Moore as a safety with his size. What do you think? Could he play safety? Yes.
Yeah, he could. Yeah.
Yes.
But what you have to understand is just because a guy is 6'3", doesn't mean he's a safety, right? Just because a guy is 5'10" doesn't mean he's a corner. It's about how you move and do you have the instincts for position. So if we were just going to base this off of his size, yeah, he's a safety based on just his pure size. The reason Notre Dame is recruiting him, however, is because he moves like a corner. He has the instincts of a corner. He has the ball skills of a corner. And that's what they're looking for. And we're seeing more teams looking for that when they can find it. You're seeing more and more tall corners playing now. I mean, you look at the success that Marcus Freeman has had, but he's not the only one. And that's something that Notre Dame wants. They want those long guys that can play corner, and Devin Moore is that. Now, again, that doesn't mean he won't play safety at some point in time in his career. And that's something I've said. When they were first looking at him, I assumed he was going to be a safety. And then I finally sat down and talked to him because of the length, for the same reason Chris did. I just assumed because of how many corners they signed last year that they had so many corners on the board that he was more of a safety, free safety kind of guy. Nope. Like, no, we love this kid as a corner. Okay, there you go. So, I mean, I dig it.
Paul Gonzalez Jr. says, awesome get on the defensive side of the ball, but who's the next big get on offense? It's great to have a dominating defense, but it's no good if we can't score.
We'll get to all that next week. But again, as I said in the show yesterday, or was it Friday, just because they're not recruiting on the same level as the defense does not mean the recruiting on offense stinks. Okay? I'm not going to say the phrase that you all know I want to say right now, but let's just see what they can do next, right? But there's a lot to like about what's left on the board at receiver, what's left on the board at offensive line, what they have in the current roster is in the freshman, class and sophomore classes. So, yeah, it's so hard not to say it. I'm trying not to say it.
Just say it.
But just let it play out.
Thank you. I don't want you to start itching.
I know, right? I was getting ready to
Jack Sullivan says, you agree that it's the best 2-year haul at DB in the BK era already? I guess that's even without the two safeties that could potentially commit or not commit.
Oh man, it's obviously 17. It's not going to be part of any of this conversation because of how bad that was.
17, 18, yeah.
Yeah, because 17, I mean, they didn't get a safety. I mean, it was such a disaster. So basically 17 eliminates the 2 years before it. So I'm trying to think what they did in 2015 because I really liked – I'm trying to remember who exactly was part of that 2015 class because I did really like the 2016 class, obviously, that had Julian Love and Troy Pride and those kind of guys. So 2015 – yeah, Ashton White, Sean Crawford, Nick Coleman, Nico Fertitta, McKelty Williams. I really liked McKelty Williams. Yeah, this would probably be my top group. Probably be my top group. I mean, yeah, this would be my best 2-year. There's just a couple years because I thought T. Shepard was really good coming out of high school. But, they came up a little, because you had the CJ Prosise, Elijah Shoemate, Nick Barotti at safety in 2012. You had T. Shepard and Kavari Russell at corner. That was really good. And then next year in 2013, you had Cole Luka corner. You had Drew Tranquil at safety. You had Devin Butler at corner. You had Max Redfield at safety. That was a really good 2-year haul, too. I mean, that was a really good 2-year haul. I mean, you think about what they added in those 2 years. So what I'll say to you, Jack, is I say right now it's kind of a wash. The key for Notre Dame is going to be, can you get that safety? If they can go get that safety, because I don't think you can strike out at a position that you need at least one guy in and say that, hey, it's the best. So I think right now when you look at that 2012 haul that had T. Shepard, look, we know what T. Shepard became, but we didn't know that at the time. At the time, he was a top 50 prospect. You had Kavari Russell. You had CJ Prosise. You had Elijah Shoemate, who was a 4-star top 200 caliber safety. Then the next year you get Cole Luke, who was a top 150 player. You got Drew Tranquil, who I loved in high school. You got Max Redfield, who was a 5-star safety. So right now I'd probably give the edge to 2012 and 2013 because this class isn't done yet. If they land a safety, especially if they get Xavier Nwankpa, then this class then this 2-year haul jumps ahead of them. So right now I would say no, I don't agree with that. But I think when if they can get one more safety or one safety, that it would become the best group, the best 2-year haul, which is important because, as you know, Vince, I like looking at things in pairs. You can't just look at a class independent because it's not just that one class playing against everybody. What did you get before? What comes after are very important. Sorry, Vince.
No, that's okay. William J. Stites has a great question here because this is something that you harp on a lot. How important is the offer list? Is it more important than star rankings?
Only if you understand the context of the offer list. And what I mean by that is Alabama throws out a lot of offers. Surprisingly, a surprisingly high number of offers for a program that could just pick and choose who they want. And so just because a kid has an Alabama offer doesn't mean he's being recruited by Alabama. Right. And, you could look and say, well, this kid had, Clemson, LSU, but yeah, he wasn't a take there. So if you understand the context of the offer list, I think the offer list means more to me than the rankings, especially now. The rankings to me 10 years ago mattered a little bit more because I had a difference of opinion. I had a different opinion of the people that were doing the rankings. And I still have a lot of respect for what 247 does to a degree. And I think SI99, SL American works really hard, but the other one is just kind of falling off a cliff a little bit in regards to the quality of the people that are doing the rankings for the most part. So, rankings to me are fun. They're nice, but I care more about who a kid is going after. I think the other thing too is you also, part of the context of the offer, something I've explained before, Vince, is some schools are great programs, but like if Clemson offers an offensive lineman, what about Clemson the last 6 or 7 years when it comes to offensive lines makes you think that they should be considered? This isn't a knock. Not that they don't know what they're doing. I mean, you're not winning titles if you have bad offensive line, but it's not like they're pumping out elite offensive lines. They're not winning Joe Moore awards or not putting guys in the first 2 rounds.
You went through it the other day. They're not getting guys drafted off the offensive line.
Not many.
To the extent that Notre Dame is.
Right, and they're like 3rd, 4th round picks. A lot of them are, Mitch Hyatt was a top recruit coming out of high school. He was a 4-year starter at Clemson. He went undrafted. Mm-hmm. So if an offensive lineman's got an offer from Clemson, does that really move the needle for me relative to Kirk Ferentz wants him? Or Alabama's offered them, or if Alabama's offered a tight end, I mean, they've had good tight ends, but I don't consider them like the tight end gurus of college football. Right. So it doesn't necessarily move the needle. If a receiver is being recruited by Alabama, that's going to tell me something, right? If a DB gets an offer from, this is what I said about Memorial Walker. The fact that Nick Saban saw this kid work out in person and said, we want to offer you as a DB, maybe like, it wasn't necessarily the Alabama offer, and like a lot of running backs that Alabama offers. I think Alabama recruits a lot of highly ranked, overrated running backs. I just do, that have success in college more because of the offensive lines they play in behind than what they are necessarily. Sure. And Trent Richardson being a prime example of that. So you have to understand the context of it, William. It is a great question, but if a school is recruiting him and it's a top program or a program that is good at producing certain positions, then yes. It matters. Like if Ohio State offers and wants a receiver, that matters to me. If Ohio State's offering and recruiting a tight end, I don't care.
Makes sense to me. Trey Taylor says D Moore fits perfectly to the boundary, but is it just me? But in film study, he seems able to sink his hips and explode out of his breaks towards the ball. Technique still needs to be refined.
And Trey's a DB guy, so Trey's going to see some of that minutia, Vince, that maybe we might miss. But no, absolutely. And when his technique is right, Trey, that's exactly what you see. Yeah. Is you see a guy that has some explosiveness. And you don't see that a lot from 6'3" guys.
He kind of follows it up. He says Devin Moore has very similar length to Patrick Surtain, not as polished, but has some similar traits athletically.
Yeah.
That's big. That's a big comparison.
Explain why Alabama's recruiting him. I mean, and to his point, Patrick Surtain was a very physically developed, polished player because, guess who his dad was, right? Yeah. His dad's a coach too. That's the other thing. Is like, just because your dad played in the NFL doesn't mean your dad can teach you how to play.
That's very true.
Patrick's dad is, he's a high school coach. I mean, he coaches, he can teach. Not only was he a great player in college and in the NFL, but he can teach the game too. And he clearly taught it to his son. And I was very happy the Broncos drafted him as a Broncos fan. And Devin Moore isn't quite as polished, but to Trey's point, there are tools that you look at and say, boy, if this kid can pick those parts of the game up, and it's not always a given that kids are going to take to coaching, but if Devin Moore can take to coaching and they can clean those things up, he's got a chance to be special.
Ryan Haley has an interesting question. He says, does this class have the potential to get to 28 commits with who's left on the big board? If not, does that mean not landing Rice, Moss, or Nwankpa?
What they would do is they would start making decisions not to take certain players before they got to 28 at that point in time. So like if they got to 28 and the class did not include those 3 players, you could even add Anthony Lucas in there, then they're not going to get to 28 if they think they can get those guys because they can't take 31. I mean, that's literally illegal. So
what is the number that they can take?
The most you can take is 30. It's the most you can take is 25 in a class, but but if you have early enrollees, you can put some of them to the previous year.
Gotcha.
So that allows you over 25, but I'm pretty sure that 30 is the max number you can get to.
Okay, interesting.
I could be wrong on that, but I believe. But Notre Dame's not going to bring in 28 commits. I don't think. I think they'll get up to 26, 27. If they get up to 28, it would mean they're getting Rice or Lucas or Moss or Nwankpa. It would not mean that they're getting to 28 without those guys. I just don't think I think they would turn scholarships to the 2023 class for the reasons we talked about. It's a really good class so far, and they could, hey, instead of maybe only have room for one corner if we bring a 28, but if we're smart about it, then we may still have room for a second corner or a second running back or a third receiver or fourth receiver, whatever the case may be, next year.
Mm-hmm. Colin C says, have you ever had a player commit during a show about a player committing?
Have you ever had a player commit during a show about a player commitment? I don't. Well, we haven't been doing shows that long.
Yeah, right.
So, no.
Because back in your old places, you weren't doing them like immediately after, right? I mean,
we would, but they'd be like little quick 10-minute deals.
Okay.
It was like little 10, 15-minute deals. But no, I don't think. Wait, there was a kid. I think there was a kid that committed during wasn't there a kid that committed during one of our shows earlier? I can't remember.
It doesn't ring a bell, but
yeah, I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Jonathan,
somebody else.
Jonathan just has a nice comment here. Elite corners are so vital to winning championships, and what we have so far is nothing short of phenomenal. I agree. D-Rock, let's all hit the like, share, and notification, subscribe buttons tonight. Happy Independence Day, Brian, Vince, and everyone in the chat. Go,
yes, sir.
Irish.
Yes, sir.
Love that.
Yeah, I'll put up a couple of these while you're looking for questions.
Okay, thanks.
But just some observations of as we're watching film. Elijah Mills says extremely versatile with the different techniques he uses, which makes him a scheme fit for basically any scheme. And that's a great observation. Great observation. It also, within your scheme, gives you a lot of different things you can do with him. So you can be scheme flexible with players like him, with players like Jaden Mickey, with players like Ryan Barnes and Philip Riley and those kind of guys because of exactly what Elijah says. Not only can he fit in any defense, but when you have multiple players like that, you can then have that versatility within what you do. You could be cover 4 one play and then cover 1 the next and play them both at a high level. And that's a really important piece to this.
Jonathan says, isn't Kerry G slotted to be a safety, or am I wrong on that?
No, you're not wrong. Did we say something that made you think that he wasn't? Because I might have said they didn't land a safety in 2021, but if I said that, and that's why you're saying that, I meant to say 2020. But no, definitely he's there.
Earlier, we were talking about how there hasn't been any upsets yet. Matt D says Brennan Vernon was a huge upset in 23.
But I was more referring to the 22 class on defense.
Yes.
Brandon, he is right. That was a huge upset. A huge upset.
Right. Brandon Coos says, since Morrison is trending away, is ND still looking at the class of 22 DB Osbury from Louisiana?
Those two don't have anything to do with each other because they're, even though Aiden, or was it Osbury? I forget his name.
Because there's two of them, right? There's two Osburys.
I get the two names a little bit. The one kid's in 22, one kid's in 23.
Right.
But the 22 Osbury is he plays a lot of corner in high school, but they're recruiting him as a safety. So he is not a guy that would impact whether they're going after Benjamin Morrison at all. They're not gonna change their recruitment of him because of that. Where he would be a little bit of now we're going to turn up the heat on him. It's Austin. Where we're going to turn the heat up on him would be if they missed out on the two safeties. I think that's when they would go, okay, plan B mode. We got to go recruit him, or we got to go get another safety. losing Benjamin Morrison isn't going to impact that.
Matt D says if ND can get Sonny Styles, Montgomery to go along with Brendan Vernon, that will crush the hearts of OSU. And I would not have a problem with that.
No doubt. I was the cookout I was at yesterday back home. I was in Ohio. I went home to see my grandmother. Yeah. So I went home to see my grandmother yesterday, my 89-year-old grandma. And we had a cookout at my uncle's house. And my grandma had been sick for a while. She had COVID. She was in the hospital a couple of days. She's back home. And so I wanted to go see her, spend some time with her. And then we went to the cookout. And, of course, there's a Michigan fan there. Really nice guy, but a Michigan fan. Pretty realistic Michigan fan, which I don't meet very often. But then everyone else is Ohio State fans, right? And so I'm just like, oh, my gosh, just surrounded by Ohio State fans. So, yeah, when Notre Dame can do things to break the hearts of Ohio State fans,
you're all in.
Never a negative for me.
Ashley Hill says he has the gap closer shirt on. You two are the dynamic duo. I like that.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
Go ahead. You got one.
Tommy Kolowinski. That just sounds bad.
Yeah.
Especially after the last year we've been through. That might get me arrested. Like, what is it? Is this the new variant? Like, what are you spreading? So yeah, I'm not gonna be doing that, Tommy. But I like where your head's at, trying to think outside the box. Love it. Love it. Love it. Here's a great response. Notre Dame 2164. Every time another target commits to Notre Dame, I breathe a sigh of relief. So even though things are rolling along, I get it. There's still that anxiety of,
no doubt.
Is he going to pick Notre Dame for sure? I had someone we had someone who listens to the show all the time. It was on the channel yesterday, or was it this morning? And somebody was talking about, Devin commitment today. And he was like, I'm not sure if I feel good about Devin Moore. And I'm like, man, the minute Devin Moore tweeted out last night that he's going to commit today at 7, if you're listening and paying attention, you should have been like, going to Notre Dame. Because what I've been saying is if he commits this summer, he's going to pick Notre Dame. If he goes into the fall, it'll be a little bit trickier. But there's still that don't want to get my hopes up and get them crushed. Because it's called, the PTSD of fandom for the last 20 years of Notre Dame fans,
And Notre Dame 2164 also has a fantastic, when you were saying, but you didn't want to say, knock, knock, who's there? Let it play out.
Okay. Yep.
That was good for me. I enjoy it. If something makes me chuckle, I'm throwing it up.
Tori Phillips, this is a good response. The only need is Nwankpa because he's a gap eraser. And I think, again, I don't think they need him per se because I think they have some decent safeties. But if you really want to erase the gap, then you need him. He's the only gap eraser left on the board in the secondary, to Tori's point. So I really like that comment. No question about it.
When K-Mac kind of follows up here, he says, do you think the commitment of JT Tuimaleau today to Ohio State will affect the recruitment of Xavier Nwankpa? Could that make joining Ohio State more appealing?
No, because I don't think – that's already a position of incredible strength for Ohio State. It's not like, man, they've really had bad defensive linemen and all of a sudden they finally got a good one. I don't think that matters as much. And honestly, if anything, the 2023 commitment of Brendan Vernon might have a greater impact because he's going to play with Brendan Vernon longer. Because, if JT's as good as people think he is, he's going to be gone in 3 years. And he's a year ahead of Xavier Nwankpa. So at the end of the day, when Notre Dame's recruiting the defensive line extremely well. And this, where K-Mac is coming from, I think there's some, put some thought into that. But I think the way Notre Dame has recruited the front seven, this is going to come down to where does Xavier Nwankpa think he fits in best and where he's most comfortable and those kind of things. It won't be something like, I don't think he'll need to go down that far down the list because, number one, I think Notre Dame can compete with him and say, okay, well, yeah, maybe they're recruiting the D-line a little bit better than us, but I'll put our linebacker class against anybody that they're going against. And that's also part of that, playing him in front of him kind of thing.
All right, one of the last ones here, Brian, from Colin C. It sounds like A.J. Harris isn't trending towards Notre Dame. It just seems like it's Ohio State and Clemson. And in a recent interview, he only mentioned going for fall visits for Ohio State and Clemson. Is Notre Dame still in play?
Yes, they're still in play. They are still in play for that one.
All right, that is going to do it for what I see over there on the comment list, Brian.
Yep, I think so. There's a couple. I like this. I want to get this one out there.
Okay.
Michael Scheller, I feel the need for Sneed. I love it. I love it. I think we can. I think we can end on that one.
That's
good.
We're
end on that one.
I like
so
that.
Everyone, thanks so much for being a part of the show tonight. I really appreciate everybody spending part of their Independence Day with us. Now go outside, enjoy some fireworks. Vince, go get that grill back fired up. All right, I'm going to go upstairs, get some work done, enjoy the fireworks as best I can with my petrified dog who hates fireworks.
Yeah.
But I appreciate everybody being a part of the show with us tonight. We'll be back tomorrow at 1 p.m. We'll talk some Notre Dame football for our live show tomorrow at 1 p.m. Got a fun week planned at Irish Breakdown, and I can't wait to get to it. So everybody have a happy Independence Day. Take care of yourselves. Be well. Enjoy your time with your family, and we will talk to you all again very, very soon. And hit the like, subscribe, notifications. Talk to you all soon.
Happy 4th.